Everybody's saying that AI is going to be bigger than the internet. How do you think that it's going to transform the business world?
So I do believe that when I listen to certain people make posts on LinkedIn, there's a lot of clickbait like ChatGPT is dead or something like that, or how to become a millionaire with AI. And you're like, no, you can't just say, hey, AI, make me a millionaire. Okay, right. So it is something that it is a technology that will transform the world, some good ways and some bad. And the way I look at it is that there is this ability, that the way that it's able to process information and huge amounts of information and be able to give actionable insights is in itself, from a business point of view, is one of the driving factors. Now, one of the things when I talk to organizations, and my superpower is that I'm not a coder, I'm not a data scientist. I talk to them, they're my favorite nerds, but I like to help people understand in practical terms what AI can do and how it can impact them. And when we look at where we're at, so I like to talk maybe 30,000 foot view, that 2 years ago, that when we think about this, ChatGPT hadn't been released. So we were like at ChatGPT 2.0. That was roughly the level of a kindergartner. Okay, was basically where we're at. Now, over the last 2 years, we had the ChatGPT 3.0 in November of 2022, which is kind of like your middle to high schooler level. 4.0, which came out last March, which basically puts you at like a college level or high school, college level understanding. And now these models are getting smarter. Now, if you compare where we were 2 years ago to where we're at, it's a geometric progression. It's not linear, it's geometric. Crazy. Now, back then they were putting hundreds of millions, maybe a couple of $1 billion into these models. Over the next 2 years, they're expected to put tens of billions and hundreds of billions and even trillions of dollars into the infrastructure, which will allow us to continue a 2-year geometric progression. The biggest mistake people make is they look at ChatGPT from 6 months ago, the free version, that when they didn't know how to prompt, they didn't understand what contextual data is, and they say, that's nothing. It can't do what I need it to do, or it's no big deal. And I'm like, look, you just looked at roughly 1% of what AI can do. When you get into the capabilities, and I'm talking off the shelf AI, like Claude and ChatGPT being the two large language models that I work with the most. That just to give you an example, I can take a 100-page document. Okay, so I have a prospect that asked me, could AI help us with, and it's an ed tech company. Here's 100 pages on our guidelines. Here's a submission for a course that's 100 pages. And here's an Excel spreadsheet that evaluates, can it, how did they, with 50 questions, does this content abide by our standards? And typically they'll have a human read the course outline and compare it against what they've got. And yes, it was able to do that. I had to do a little bit of prompting, but to be able to read this, and then go in and I said, look, I just answered a few of the questions, and it's like, yes, in section 3.22, it did not conform to the outline because the outline said this, but this. So I asked it to give examples of why it gave the rating, and so that is really scary smart, and that's just like what's out on the shelf. What's going to happen is going to be 1,000 times more smart than that. And so when I show people just that capability, they're like, whoa. And I'm like, but that's just what we have access to today. So that puts it in perspective. So when we talk about this idea of how is this going to impact the future of work or organizations, we have to ask this question that right now, I can go in and I work with C-level executives and typically like startups and other organizations. And I'm like, hey, let me show you as an individual how to be 30 to 40% more efficient. That's one of the things I want to do, so you can kind of see how this can impact you, how you can summarize calls after take a transcript, summarize a call, send an email, a detailed email that's personalized in 5 minutes. You can get the full, you can ask it to be a coach and help me help me understand, was the client upset? Was it happy? What are my top 5 ways to respond to them? Like, you're getting this kind of insight that normally takes hours of reviewing information. Now you can do this in seconds. And that's what I teach. I'm like, now imagine we add this throughout your organization. Imagine we empower your employees, your marketing, your sales, your HR to become much more powerful because they're able to take these tasks and be able to use a technology that can help them get rid of the manual tasks. They can focus on the more strategic ideas.
What do you? It's awesome, and like I told you backstage, I'm like not a technical guy at all, but I'm a huge AI fan, right? And I think that if organizations don't jump on board, they're going to get left in the dust, right? What when you're working with the C-level of these different organizations, what are some of the pushback and objections you hear from them on adopting AI?
So on the larger organizations, and I've stayed away from the companies with 100 employees or more. And I mean, I've talked with several that have thousands of employees, and typically what their issue is, it's more of an organizational culture issue, where you have typically the InfoSec and the legal are going to push back. And it's a very uninformed pushback. And what I mean by that is it's more out of fear, like, oh no, our data is going to be compromised. Okay, there are ways to build models. So I totally understand the privacy and security of data. For about $100,000, it depends. There are companies out there that can do custom development. There are some out of the box tools where you can have your own generative AI or AI model that stays inside the company. You can use a model that's an open source model, like from Llama 3 from Meta, where you could train it on your data and you could get similar kinds of output without actually having to go and send any data to OpenAI or Anthropic, the company, or Google, whatever model you might use. So that's an example of there is a way to stay in compliance, privacy, and security. And it's painful. You're gonna have to change a lot of your processes, but if you don't do it, by 2027 there'll be 3 kinds of companies: AI-emergent, AI-native, or out of business.
You're right.
If you don't do this, you got 2 years, and it will take about 2 years to go from an AI beginner to an AI emergent. And emergent means you basically have AI policies. You've got it deployed not just in your product. Like, a big mistake companies do is they'll say, "Oh, we added a API to ChatGPT for this really small part of our product. We got AI covered." Okay, it's kind of like saying, "Yeah, we got an internet connection. We're covered with the internet." Yeah, but you need email, social media, voice over IP. What what I'm saying? That's people don't look at this the right way. You need to have AI for every internal process, for your data analysis, for communication within the organization. You can use AI for all of this. That will make you far more efficient. So and I say, look, here's the deal. And I've had this before. Like, I had a payroll company, 1,300 employees, talked to the CRO, 200 sales reps. I met with a sales rep. She explained to me exactly her process. It takes 3 hours. 3 hours to to do a research on an opportunity. A call is set. You got to go through it. What's the name of the company? What do they do? That's called the sales strategy doc. Then they have a call. Then she's got to put the meeting notes and summarize, and then she's got to go and do a plan, etc. And I showed her that in 15 minutes, I can do the same work that she does that takes her 3 hours. Okay, so if she has 2 opportunities a week that are new, okay, I could save her roughly 4 to 5 hours of work. Now, I said that to the CRO, and he was like, "That's great, but what would it cost for us to, get licenses? And what would it take?" I'm saying, "Yeah, you'd probably just the licenses, if you use ChatGPT, would be $60,000 a year for your company. But even that," I'm like, "But what's the time worth? You're paying these people $100,000.
That's half a job.
That's half a job, and I'm showing you how your employees can be, but we don't have any budget. Okay, we didn't budget for it this year." And I'm like, "Okay, so you're going to wait a whole year before you put this in the budget," which is And again, this is not the only one. I've had lots of companies that have said that. Oh, and then the legal people are having a problem because they think that if we, because I totally understand that there are some areas where there should be legal concern. But this idea that somehow I'm going to write an email, and because my email sounds like somebody else's email, I'm going to get sued because of, or I put a blog out or a post, and I don't know, ABC's or some company's going to sue me because I'm stealing their IP or something. No, those aren't going to be the legal issues. Where I think this is important is you will need to disclose for certain industries, did you write this with AI? I think that's important, that some marketing agencies that use AI need to disclose that to their clients. We will be using AI and that is processing some of their data. So these are the kinds of things that are important. The other is, when we're talking about security, is this idea that you are sending your data to some place, OpenAI or into Microsoft's cloud, or however you want to put this, Anthropic going into AWS. But technically, these companies have different protocols. So if you have the paid subscription of ChatGPT or Claude, they say they won't use it for training. It gives you a certain level of security where we won't train on the data that you send up to us. Okay, it's their promise, and not every time when the tech companies promise something, they deliver. There are enterprise versions of these large language models that also say they guarantee security. Again, when we're talking about this number one barrier, there's always a solution. But sometimes people's minds, the InfoSec and the legal minds, haven't grasped the gravity of the situation. And I have to work with the C-level to say, before I'm going to work with you, you have to work with the C-level, with these people, to get agreement. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere. Because the first step is to create a company policy, is to get I would say is to get what we call an AI council. You don't want your CTO running the AI council. You want that because the CTO and the tech team, they understand the data science behind AI. They don't understand what is search engine optimization or pay-per-click, or how a sales team needs to optimize their processes. So you're going to want to have the tech team involved in this council, but you're going to want to have all your business units there so that you agree upon a couple of things. This is our policy. Okay, if you don't have a policy, all your employees are basically using their personal ChatGPT accounts. They're copying confidential company data. They're sticking it in their ChatGPT accounts, and they're coming back. And there's more data leakage than that.
And Ben, that's what was going through my mind when you were saying this, because I've read studies that say, I think it's somewhere around 80% or 60% of employees are using AI, right? They're using their own version of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is. And if that's happening in your organization, that's a bigger opportunity for a data leak than what we're probably referring to here, right?
Absolutely. Well, think about the because what your tip is, some organizations will ban it off of a device. So then I have to take confidential company data, stick it into my personal phone or my personal computer to be able to break through the firewall. I am then going back and forth with transferring data, and that's a far larger security risk. So the very first thing I do, especially with the startups, is get a license. Okay, now I happen to be a big fan of Claude. That's owned by Anthropic, and as of while we're talking here, there is a huge advantage for heavy AI users, is that Claude has something called projects. A project is their version of a GPT, which is what ChatGPT has, but projects allows you to create a folder. So I can say, this is my Ben Gold AI consulting folder. But now I get a client. I create a folder for that client that I'm helping. And every conversation with that client, it helps me stay much more organized. And also, I don't have to repeat myself. It allows you to put a library of data, so that the way I use it is that if you think of the Matrix, and I was told that a lot of the younger people haven't seen the Matrix. So if you listen to this and you haven't seen the Matrix,
or a lot of my employees haven't heard of a band called Duran Duran. So
no, okay. So it's like so there's a scene in the Matrix where I forget the lady, the main character, where she needs to fly a helicopter, and there's this program, and he uploads the program, and she's just like, okay, I got it. And that's really what AI is like. So I use the example of you're talking to a therapist and you sit on the table and they ask the question, what's wrong? And you say, I'm not happy. Okay. Well, you're giving, that's a prompt. You're saying, I'm not happy, but you're not giving the AI something. They're going to give you these very generic responses. So imagine you have an 8-hour conversation with that therapist. Now, the advice you're going to get is much better than the first, 5 or 10 minutes. When you take transcripts, and that's what I do, is I'll take transcripts, upload 8 hours of transcripts as the project knowledge. Now I'm asking the question, help me design this website. Okay, help me design the website, not a generic website, but one that's designed based on these 8 hours of conversation, and walk me through what the homepage is going to be, page 2, page 3, to be a compelling argument for why we're different in the marketplace. Now you get a different kind of answer than these generic ones.
So Ben, let's take out for a second, the organizations, especially the larger organizations who are concerned about security. But there's so many different directions to go, right? Because I would think that, well, because I know I experienced this myself, is that there's so many exciting things that you can do, and sometimes you don't even know where to start, or in what department to start. So I know we talked about you got to start at the C-level and you got to have policies, okay? But what if you want to just roll up your sleeves as an organization? Would you recommend starting with the sales team, with the customer service? Because just like any change management, and I'm speaking to the choir here, you want to get a couple of small wins in, right? So if you were working with a 500-person company and you're meeting with the CEO, and the CEO is like, I love this, I want to do all of these things, but he's like, I'm afraid that there's too much going on and there's too many tools out there. How do I figure out where I'm going to go? What would you recommend as an area for where they should start?
That's a great question. And the first thing is to get buy-in that you have access to an AI tool. Okay, so you got to, at least at a minimum, get buy-in from your IT and legal that we're going to use. We can start with an off-the-shelf ChatGPT or Claude, or there are other tools that, let's say, allow you to put a large amount of data and then they communicate with ChatGPT or Claude. So you have to get some sort of buy-in, number one, that I'm allowed to use generative AI. That we can put in, there are some safeguards you can do. One way to stop that is to say, we're going to talk marketing. Marketing is not using confidential data. We're not using the phone numbers or PII that might be held in here. So that would be the two things. Is I would start with something that's a low risk project. And that's part of what I teach, or the way I work with organizations, is identify use cases. So let's walk through your process. And that's the first thing. What are you spending your time on? Are you spending time on responding to emails? Are you spending time on creating content or putting search engine optimization strategies, pay-per-click strategies? Every single one of these things, you can use the large language models to help you, and then there's specialized tools that are designed. And so as we look at each of these use cases, we say, okay, so you need to train the employees to understand the concept of prompting and how to put in contextual data. Test out how would just a large language model work, and here are the top 2 or 3 other companies that do this. If you do that, then you can say, well, gosh, this is helping us to knock 60% of the time or 70% of the time we spend on this task. I'm really practical, task by task, of identifying what am I spending my time on. So another example is I have a startup founder. We created an investor folder or an investor project inside of Claude. We set up a scorecard. These are the kinds of investors we're looking for. So that now when you meet with an investor, you can just put the transcript here. Now you get a readout and an analysis of how that call went, and help you to define, do you want to go further or not?
It's incredible, if you think about it. Are you recommending to people that they should hire like a AI expert and having somebody on staff that kind of heads up the AI council, or do you think that it should just be carried out through your organization? And because I ask that because you need somebody to cheerlead the initiative, right?
There is, and that's a great question. I have a friend of mine who is really, we graduated we studied together in Italy many years ago, and he's got this really nice consulting business, a very successful one. And I spoke with him and I was like, I'm happy to help you with any AI questions. And he goes, we've got this guy, this kid that's like an AI whiz, and he's doing all the stuff for us. And I'm like, you know what? You're covered. I don't think, he's 20 employees. It looks like he's adopting AI in many different ways. So in that case, I'm like, you know what? You're good. But if your organization, so first of all, I'd say if there's 100 or more employees, and I can be a bit more specific, 100 or more knowledge workers. So if you got a manufacturing plant where you've got, 50 people that are in a warehouse, and 30 employees, you might not need this, but let's say 100 knowledge workers, you should have a full-time AI expert that looks at everything. Now, you could also, if you don't want to hire somebody, you hire someone like me or an AI consultant. It's an emerging field. There's not a lot of people, but I see on LinkedIn, there's a number of people that do strategy consulting, but it is good to get somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, that can look at your organization and see things that you don't see. And that's where the outside consulting firms, now for the Fortune 100 and 500, they're paying billions of dollars to Price, PwC, McKinsey to go in and be able to consult for them. The mid-sized companies are the ones that I think are getting left behind, the 100 to 500 employee companies that they don't have the budget for a PwC. They don't know where to start. And that's where I think that you either hire somebody to be full-time or you get a consulting firm to walk you through this process.
It's interesting, and I heard you talk about this when I was researching you, is that when it comes to AI, you're talking about these enterprise-level companies who spend billions of dollars, but generative AI and AGI or whatever is coming up it's going to democratize everything, right? So smaller organizations who maybe don't have those $1 billion budgets, they can now compete with the larger firms because of what AI allows them to do.
That is the irony in the whole thing. So I'm working with a couple of startups, two of them, and I'm negotiating with a third, and all three of them are upending their industry. They're taking on established. One of them is creating a new space, but the other two want to take on an established space. And I said, well, why don't we reimagine what this space would look like? So, for example, the concept of filling out a form. Nobody should ever fill out a form. You should be able to speak into your phone. So, for example, if I'm doing an inspection, you speak into your phone, you interview somebody, you ask questions, you do whatever you need, you take pictures, and the AI should be able to understand based on geospatial information, based on the database, oh, this picture is from this location, which is associated with this project. Oh, I noticed a safety violation because the ladder is whatever. So the AI should be able to do that. When I speak into the phone, the transcript should not only be transcribed, but parsed out. Okay, parsed out to answer the question. So imagine changing the way things are done. And this isn't any industry, but by thinking along those lines, like I had this conversation. I was supposed to go to a university. A gentleman wanted me to hop on a plane and go to the Midwest, go to a 3-hour plane. He said, I want you to come with me. We're going to go into this university and we're going to talk to their medical school, it was like a university hospital. So, and they're using pencil and piece of paper. And I'm like, okay. And of course, he goes, but I need to get confirmation. And sure enough, when he confirmed with them, their argument was, no, we don't need AI because we have the best AI data scientists at our university. And he goes, yeah, but you're using pencil and piece of paper at your medical center. And I'm like, yeah, for example, imagine the patient experience when you walk in and someone says, what's wrong? And you say all the different things. And instead of the nurse having to write it down, it gets transcribed and it fills out the form. So the doctor, doesn't have to ask questions. But the idea is that if you record all this conversation, you say, look, we're recording this. And now you've got the patient record. Now, whenever they come back, the AI already knows who they are, what they've been through. and would give, I said, that's just an example of better experience, but also you could talk about better outcomes. This would transform the entire medical scene. And yes, some doctors are afraid that it would replace them. People still want to talk to a human, but having an AI say, you know what, here are the top 3 things that probably are wrong, but here are 3 things you probably didn't consider. And if this is a rare disease, consider this as being number 4, 5, and 6. And the AI would be able to crunch that.
And also what I'm hearing you say too is the transfer from the pen and paper, pencil and paper into a computer or whatever, or just writing it down incorrectly, you're reducing or eliminating those errors as well, which is going to lead to a better outcome.
And people might say, what today, the AI might not be able to transcribe as well. The I forget, oxy, blah, blah, blah. I can't pronounce these pharmaceutical things. And maybe there is an issue, but I'll tell you this, whatever we have today is going to be 100 times to 1,000 times more intelligent. Those mistakes won't be made in a year or 2 years from now. So you have to base your AI strategy on the way AI will be, not on the way it was. And to factor in a geometric progression of intelligence. And that's something that people just do not understand. I could show you some things. I know we're just talking, but I show certain things that blow people's minds of tools that can do a disk analysis in 10 seconds, okay, which normally takes hours. Or you go through this whole thing, it looks at your LinkedIn profile, and it will give you a full analysis of your personality, 10 seconds. I can, DALL-E 3 and Midjourney can do some amazing photorealistic images, and even, OpenAI is probably going to have an upgraded version of DALL-E 3 that probably will blow away Midjourney, which is hard to imagine. But these are the kinds of things that are coming down the road.
Yeah, it's amazing. I live out here in San Francisco, and I went to lunch with a friend who's a pretty big thought leader in the AI space. And one of the things that he recommended to me was don't spend a lot of money building GPTs or agents or anything right now, because in a year from now, that's all going to be done, right? It's all going to, like you say, it's going to be, 500,000 times better. So, watch your investment on that piece.
I would say that let me temper that. There's some agents that you could build that today can give you value. What I would say is that I would absolutely experiment with agents. That's actually so the 2 things that
you explain, Ben? Can you explain the difference, what an agent, what a GPT is and an agent?
Sure. So GPT for me is actually, I'm not a big fan of GPTs. Okay. So GPT is an app on the ChatGPT store, so I can come in. So one of the things that I'm really not a big fan of with the GPTs is anybody can create one. Okay. So for example, I put together 6 career GPTs because I said that, I spent a lot of time with the job seeker perspective, and GPTs work when you have a very narrow scope. So I said, here's one about how to determine career goals. Here's a GPT on how to write a resume. Here's a GPT on how to network on LinkedIn. And I explained my methodology so you can upload documents. So it's like you go in it and you can type something and a GPT will give you an answer where somebody else has already put in a lot of the context and the data and the methodology. The problem is I don't use them very much because some of them are just crap. Some of them I can create a GPT that has no data, no methodology, but has a great title, PowerPoint maker. Okay. I can call it anything. I can say business plan maker, and I could put in, a 3-page document and so there's really no quality control. There's no way. So, but the other problem with the GPT is since you don't know what the prompt is in the back end, it's really hard to work with it. Now, I have created in the past GPTs for me personally to make my life simpler. So this is my LinkedIn GPT for writing posts. However,
send me that, please.
Well, actually, but the Claude version or Anthropic. So for the people that know, ChatGPT and Claude.ai. Claude has an idea of projects. Projects to me is much better than GPTs because I can upload a whole bunch of documents. I can tell it exactly what I want it to do, how to act, and then I can create separate chats. So I have one, and that's really a big deal because like I will, let's say, have maybe 2 or 3 prospect discussions every day. And I want to be able to set a separate chat per prospect. But I wanted to understand what I'm going against. What is my consulting services? How do I work? And that allows me to stay very organized, and ChatGPT doesn't. Now, your second part, agents. So this is kind of scary. Okay, so but I want people to understand this. This does freak some people out when I go through what an agent is. Think of writing a cover letter, writing an email, summarizing a discussion is a task. An agent is a program that puts tasks in a logical order together. So a customer success agent is one that would say, oh, hey, and I have a friend who actually creates these agents for companies, which says, this is a customer success agent. It can be assigned a segment of the company. You could have 100 different AI agents inside of your company. So I am the agent that handles companies that are in the financial space between 0 and 100 employees. And so when they sign up and we know what their product they're buying and what they're using, this agent would proactively say, hi, I see you bought our product. Okay, would you like to get a demo? Or, so something that is able to interact instantly, but be like a human and be able to answer like a human. Okay, so that, well, I noticed that you haven't been using our product, or you haven't done this. Would you like to understand this? And so most companies, they have time for their top 10% of clients. They get the white glove service, and then they outsource to the Philippines or India, some call center for the other 90%. AI agents can service those 90% in a very personalized way.
For perspective, how much, for what you're just talking about, a customer service agent, how much would something like that, how much would you have to invest to build something like that? Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars, or is it something that could get done for like 10 grand?
I'm going to say that I know a company that charges 10 grand to build it, and then roughly, a monthly fee to maintain it. So you're talking 4 to 5 figures to build. Now, granted, if you're Microsoft or something really complicated, I'm talking the company with 500 employees.
That's what I mean.
Could get it built. Could get it built for in the 4 to 5 or low 5 figures. Okay, could have something like that built.
That's amazing.
Now you also have a sales. Like if you're talking to a sales agent, there are tools out there. Like one is called clay.com, where you can, a lot of companies, what they'll do is you've got, so a big thing I teach is like with the sales, with these startups is I'm like, do not create a standard sales team. Step one is let's get the best tools out there that will help you scrape the data. So first of all, you got a database of who your clients are. A lot of companies have a list. Like one of the clients, one of my companies is in the restaurant space. So they have a list of a database of all 700,000 restaurants that exist. Okay, that's not that difficult to get. What Clay does, and that's just one tool, can help you. It goes through, and it will help you to go through all these other data sources to add on top of that. Ownership. If, restaurants not really, we're not talking about Series A or Series B, but it goes through all these other sources and can at scale enrich. So you can begin to understand who are the employees that work what are their roles? And it basically is able to help in seconds to get email addresses, phone numbers. Then you can at scale personalize. And so the idea is that when you hire your sales rep, that rep should just be taking appointments and meeting with people. They shouldn't be spending their time trying to go through data and figuring stuff out. It should just be, hey, these AI agents have already sent out the emails. They've already gone through the day's events. They've determined what's happening in the world, what's happening in these companies. And because this person's the marketing executive and their company just had this new acquisition, let's send an email about the acquisition and saying, this is how our service will help you.
So So is clay.com, CLAY.com?
Clay.com is one of the tools that is typically used. It's a good one to start with. It's not going to do every single thing, but what I'm saying is it depends on your business and what you're looking to accomplish. But that's the level of automation that's going to exist. When we're talking about the improvement of AI, it's going to become more aware. It's going to become more smart. It's going to understand how, if it's raining in Chicago, how this might impact your business. Like if you're a delivery company, and help you, like that's like, even like FedEx, I saw they had that's something they use, that it's raining in Chicago, therefore we're going to reroute our package delivery. Okay, being able to understand stuff like how these other events that seem to be unrelated, but you layer them on and the AI can absorb it and help you make better decisions.
You talk about this in your book, and I think it's really important. When it comes down to it, us are the thought leaders. It is your partner. You can't rely on it to be the thought leader.
Yes. So this is about redefining your relationship with AI. You are the thought leader. AI is your thought partner. With your leadership, you tell AI what you want it to do. And as your thought partner, it will do the heavy lifting and bring you back a result. But the biggest mistake, and I think this is one of the greatest risks that I see right now when it comes to AI, is leaders abdicating their role as the thought leader. I see this every time somebody copies and pastes an answer from ChatGPT without asking, do I agree? You see people asking it to write an email or a blog post or a customer communication and just copy and paste it without asking, is this our voice? Do I agree with what it's saying? How do I know that this is true? So think of it this way. If you're in a car, you're in the driver's seat, AI's in the passenger seat. Ask it to do the heavy lifting, but at the end of the day, you need to have human judgment here and apply that to the situation.
Absolutely. You can't just rely on the results. I have a friend who put out a newsletter and just cut and paste some stats with nothing backing it up. And people call him out on it. Like, where did it come from? And at the end of the day, he just made the mistake because he just trusted AI instead of, fact checking it. I think
100%.
it gets you down the field, but it can't get you into the end zone is essentially what you're saying.
Yes.
Let's say one of the things I loved about your book is you got so many great, case studies in there. Give us an example of a strategic problem
Sure.
where you used AI, to help a customer or a friend.
There are tons of stories in the book. I'm going to give you one that's not in the book. That way,
Even better.
when you read the book, you get something new. I sat down with a group of CEOs and I just asked, what are the biggest problems you are facing that if we could solve them would unlock a new level of growth for your business? Now, I want you to even think about the question I just asked them. I'm not asking for what's an easy way you could use AI. Don't care. I actually don't even care about AI. I care about your business growing. AI is a tool that can accelerate your growth or distract you from it. The difference that makes the difference is you, and whether you are strategy first, technology second. So one guy looks at me and he says, okay, I got a good one. I run a manufacturing company. I leased a whole bunch of equipment from this company in Japan, but things have shifted in the market and the debt structure is now killing us. We're going to go bankrupt if it does not get restructured. I look at him and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What have you done? He goes, man, we tried everything. And he lists 5 different initiatives that they had deployed to get the board to restructure the debt. And he goes, the problem is because this is a publicly traded company in Japan, the board is refusing to restructure the debt because they think it'll make them lose face in Japanese society.
That's crazy. AI said that.
No, he said that to me.
Oh yeah. He said that
said
too.
that to me, and I'm going, you got to be. Oh my gosh, okay. And he looks at me and he goes, "Can AI help?" That was the right question. Any use case, I don't approach with an expectation of a result. I approach with curiosity. Can it help? I don't know. Let's find out. And then can I use really good communication ingredients like context, role, interview, task to generate a high quality prompt to get a high quality answer? So I literally pulled up, in this case, ChatGPT, followed that same recipe: context, role, interview, task. Context. I run a manufacturing company. We leased all this equipment from a company in Japan. Things have shifted in the market. The debt is now killing us. We're going to go bankrupt if it doesn't get restructured. Here's the things we've tried. And I listed all 5 initiatives in detail. None of it has worked because this is a publicly traded company in Japan. It's gone all the way to the board and they are refusing to restructure the debt because they think they'll lose face in Japanese society. That was the context. Your role is to act as an investment banker with deep expertise in restructuring debt. Interview me by asking 1 question at a time, up to 3 questions to gain more context, so you can accomplish the task of generating 5 non-obvious strategies I could deploy to get the board to restructure the debt. And I hit enter. AI immediately asked, do you have any relationships with influential executives in Japan that this board would respect? I look at the CEO and he goes, whoa, I would have never asked that question. Oh my gosh, I do. And I'm thinking to myself, of course you wouldn't have. You don't have 2,000 years of Japanese culture in your head, but AI does. And then it asked 2 more questions about how he had navigated Japanese society in the past. It came back and goes, okay, here's your 5 non-obvious strategies. Number 1, it labeled the Saving Face Consortium. It said, you have enough relationships with the right people in Japan. Approach them to acquire the debt. Give them really favorable terms. Your debt will get restructured. The board will save face. Damon, I look at him. His whole body language had completely changed. And I can tell he is literally holding back tears. He looks at me and he says, I haven't slept in 90 days. I have literally been making peace with the fact that we are going out of business. And in less than 10 minutes, I got hope. We texted a few months later and he said, the ball's moving and this is actually going to get done.
Incredible. So what I hear you saying, it really is too, what leaders, managers, we all need to start looking at things a little differently. Instead of thinking like, okay, how do I go about this problem, right? How do I go about it? How do I solve it? Who do I bring in as individuals? Shift your mindset. I actually set this out to my team today, Jeff, by the way. Instead of asking that question, start asking, what can AI do to help me solve this problem?
Yes. I literally tell people when we do trainings for their teams, the one action I want them to take, and I'm going to apply this to you, I want you to grab a sticky note, a Sharpie, and I want you to write, how can AI help me do this? How can AI help me do this? And stick it on your computer, stick it on your desk, stick it on your monitor, stick it someplace that you will see it every day. Because if you just see that sticky note, it will prompt you to ask the question for whatever you're doing in the moment. And if you genuinely approach with curiosity, like, will it work? I don't know. Let me use some good communication ingredients, context, role, interview, task, for example. There are plenty more that are in the book, by the way, page 73 specifically, but that will give you a good starting point and you will build confidence and competence very quickly.
And it doesn't even have to be, if you want to get in the habit, it doesn't even have to be around work stuff. It
No.
could be problems you run into at home. I find myself just taking a picture or something, sitting to AI at home and say like, how do I fix this challenge or this problem and rely on it.
I'll give you one. My wife's birthday was coming up. I have a track record of being terrible giving her gifts. And I wanted to really knock it out of the park. And so I went to AI, context, role, interview, task. Context is my wife's birthday coming up. You know, these are her love languages. She's constantly said that she wants to feel taken care of and seen. Like, I gave it lots of context. Your role is to act as an expert gift giver. Interview me by asking 1 question at a time, up to 5 questions to gain deeper context. And then your task is to outline the best gifts that I could give her that would make her feel loved, seen, heard, in alignment with her love languages. And it conducted an interview and it came back and it said, well, have you considered writing her a bunch of notes about what it is that you love and appreciate about her so much? And you could create a scavenger hunt around the house where she has to go and she finds a note for every single one. And I said, oh, this is fantastic. Now conduct the interview of me to pull what you need out of my head to structure the things that I love about her. Now, I could have written all those things down, but there's something about when somebody asks you the question, things flow. And here's the hidden value. It's capturing all the additional words that you give it, and it's able to process them and to give them back. The things that it spat out, I could have handwritten everything, at least the ideas that it came up with. One, it helped me do it faster. Two, the writing was so much better because the things it pulled out of my head, it was phenomenal.
I guess the question is, when you gave her the present, did you give AI the credit for coming up with the ideas?
No.
Yeah. There you go.
No.
There you go.
Now I don't need to hide it either. But
Yeah.
because here's the thing, and I see this in companies, still to date, the majority of people are using it, but they're hiding that they're using it. And I think this is a huge leadership opportunity to create a culture where it's celebrated to say, I used AI for this, rather than thinking that this is something that is going to diminish your capability. Because I believe this is going to enhance you, not replace you. And in fact, like there's a person on when I look at my team, everybody has to be AI driven. We have to practice what we teach. If somebody is doing things the old fashioned way, which is going to take longer and be lower quality work, they don't have a right to be on my team. I expect you to engage your resources.
So how can a leader take, let's just say, one step to start getting people to feel comfortable admitting that they're using AI and celebrating it amongst the team?
Well, all leadership starts with self-leadership. Now, this also depends on where you fall on the org chart. If you're the CEO or you're C-suite, it's time to go first and to start using this and to talking to people about how you're using it. Let's assume you're not in the C-suite. I think you have an opportunity to use this and find a really cool use case where you can then go to a senior leader and say, I want to show you something that I came up with. I mean, this is literally how I ended up getting put in charge of AI for the steel company. I was just using it, and I knew the chairman was using it, and we were talking about it back and forth, and I started showing him how I was using this for strategic thinking, and he was like, this is incredible. And I was like, that's when I made the pitch. And who better to put in charge of championing this through the company than the person who's already championing it without being appointed to do so? And so I genuinely believe for people and companies, if you are listening to this right now and you're really getting excited about this, you have an opportunity to create a career advantage. Your job is nothing more than the skills you apply and the processes you follow. In every technological disruption in history, technology changed the skills that were valued and the processes that we followed. So when you are hiding the fact that you're using AI, you're clinging to the way things used to be rather than reimagining how can things become. So start using it, find a way to deliver value with it, and then start teaching other people how you're using it and helping them become more comfortable and successful with it. And I think you'll have an opportunity, especially if you're willing to pitch a vision for the company in terms of what this looks like. You'll write your ticket.
And it comes down to, we talked about this earlier a little bit, fixed mindset versus growth mindset,
Yes.
right? If you're going to be stuck in your ways and afraid of it, hey, people, this is inevitable. You have to get on the train. I mean, it's not going to stop. I mean, I heard somebody say, which is true, that the change of pace is the slowest it's ever going to be in our lifetime. It's only going to get faster and faster. So you got to get on board. I think that is so critical. Now, there is some truth to definitely some truth to the risks of AI. You know, people are afraid of, it's going to replace me. It's going to take away my job. What advice do you have for CEOs and team leaders of how to address that, Jeff, with their team?
Sure. So again, I wanted to have data to support what I'm about to tell you. So I literally went back and studied the major technological disruptions of the past: printing press, steam engine, assembly line, electricity, internet. This is when I realized your job is the skills you apply and the processes you follow. In every disruption, tech changed the skills that were valued and the processes that were followed. As a trend, more jobs were created than displaced. Will there be job displacement here? Yes. But what you have to realize is it's not the job or it's not the person that gets eliminated. It's the skills and processes that have become outdated. So you, regardless of your level, have a huge opportunity. If your job currently is leveraging skills and processes that AI can augment or automate, what you currently do will change. I'm going to tell you 6 out of the 10 jobs that exist today didn't even
Gone.
exist in
Yep.
1940. So to assume that your job will continue the way it is, you're thinking like Blockbuster and not like Netflix. You have an opportunity to acquire the next skills. For people who have a fixed mindset, that is scary. And they're not bad people. They fear that change. People who have a growth mindset see that as an opportunity. I am calling you to ask the question, who can I become in the future? I think a great example of this, Dan Sullivan wrote a book called 10x is easier than 2x. He makes this claim that you can double the size of your company. You can keep doing 80% of what you currently do. You only have to change 20%. But if you want to 10x your company, or as an individual, 10x your income, you literally have to stop doing 80% of what you currently do, hold on to the core 20% that brings the most value, and then move all that 80% to a completely higher level of capability. Here's why I think this is good news. In my experience, and you tell me if you agree with this, Damon, I think most of people's time is consumed by 3 things: checking email, sitting in meetings, and doing the things on their to-do list. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Now, the things on their to-do list, are they filled with 20% priorities that drive 80% of the results, or clouded with 80% tasks that only drive 20% of the results?
They're mostly mundane tasks that are just getting in their way. But Jeff, it also comes down to, and I'm curious to see what you think about it, is getting people out of their comfort zone to just
Yes.
falling into the habit of working on that garbage, so to say.
Yes. Well, and again, this is why the mindset is so important. AI can already augment or automate half of what you do. That can scare you or it can excite you. As a guy for the last 10 years who was coaching executive teams and advising companies and boards, that first scared me because most of what I did was asking the questions. And I looked at AI and said, I've already proven AI can ask the questions. So I could be afraid of that, or I could view it as an opportunity. I chose to be abundant and view it as an opportunity. I've already created an AI model that's been trained on my book and has 10 pages of custom instructions to get it to be me on my website at aileadership.com. That now has excited me because now I can free myself from having to be the person that asks all the questions and now move to a higher level of capability. And I'll tell you, I have 10x'd, no doubt. And so I think you really have to start and just recognize that you have an opportunity here. What you have done in the past does not have to be what you do in the future. I would challenge you. How can you use AI to free yourself from at least half of what you've done in the past? And how can you create an opportunity to make your skill set even more valuable for the future?
You gave a great example of a study in your book about BCG, where they
Oh,
took
yeah.
758 consultants and the difference of what AI did for them.
Sure. So Boston Consulting took 758 of their consultants. These are, mostly Ivy League trained, very highly paid people. They split them into 2 groups. One group, keep doing what you were doing. Second group, start using AI. They literally gave them a ChatGPT account and maybe 10 minutes of training on how to prompt. The results were staggering. The people that used AI had a 40% increase in quality of work. They got it done 25% faster, and they got 12.2% more tasks done just by engaging AI as a co-pilot in what they did.
I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. So so I'm a manager out here thinking about this, going, okay, I got to get going on this. What is a way that
one of the things that a lot of leaders have to do, managers have to do, are performance reviews. What is a way that you can use AI to drastically cut down the time it takes to do performance reviews, and not only do them quicker, but do them more effectively?
Sure. So let's assume that you have a template for performance reviews inside your company. If you don't, you can ask it. If you don't have a template, ask it to act as an expert in doing performance reviews to generate the template. It'll give you an answer, and then ask if you think that that will really work for your organization. You can have it interview you by asking one question at a time to identify what is going to matter most in your company, and then generate the template. Get to a template. If you already have a template, you literally can copy click on the PDF and drag it into any of these AI models and drop it, and it'll be right there. Say, you are an expert in HR and conducting performance reviews. I want you to interview me by asking one question at a time to gain all the information you need to fill out the attached template. Once you have enough information, generate the performance review. And it will literally start conducting an interview of you and spit it out. Now, the moment it gives it to you, do not just copy and paste it. You're the thought leader. AI is your thought partner. Ask yourself the question, do I really agree with this? Is there anything that's missing? You could then say, great, now I want you to act as my direct report that I'm about to give this to. Give me feedback on what you like about this performance review, what you don't like about it, and the top things I could do to make it even better. And it will adopt the persona of the person who's receiving the feedback and give you that perspective. And then you can say, great, based on that, now enhance it. I have seen people do high quality performance reviews in under 10 minutes that blew any previous one out of the water.
I agree, man. And I look, I've even used it before, and I would ask it, I'd say, am I being too harsh here, or am I being too nice? Give me some feedback on it. And it really pushes you to, it's amazing when you use it for that.
I'll give you another use case. Last week, I was texting with a guy who's been, the core of our business is called the AI-driven leadership collective. I'm creating a executive AI network of AI-driven leaders where we get offsite a few times a year to really share and collaborate on how we're using this so that we can give them all the roadmaps and playbooks so that they just implement this way faster. The guy said, I don't know if I can make the January offsite. I have to cut $2 million from our operating budget as mandated by the board. And I literally texted him back and said, have you asked how can AI help me do this? And he goes, oh my gosh, no. What would that even look like? And I literally sent him the prompt. Context role interview task. Context. Here is our financial statements from the past, and here's our financial projections for the future. Here's what you need to know about our business. Here's where we've been focusing. Here's where I currently perceive the greatest opportunities to cut costs. Your role is to act as a strategic CFO who's adept at cutting $2 million from operating expenses without slowing growth. Interview me by asking one question at a time, up to 5 questions to gain deeper context, and then complete the task of outlining the roadmap for how I can cut $2 million within the next 6 months without slowing down growth. I sent it to him. 5 minutes later, he sent me, holy crap. I literally saved him 45 days of work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I'm just trying to get people to understand. It's like ridiculous the game changer it can be and the time it can save by doing all this. Now, as we kind of wrap up here, Jeff, we talk a lot about.
Can I give you one more?
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So, one of the guys who's in the collective, he's in the real estate space. He has built a very successful company flipping houses. And he had his strategic plan and he had sent it to me. And I said, have you used AI to bulletproof this? And he goes, no, what would that look like? And I said, literally drag and drop your strategic plan into AI. It had met the security provisions, which we could talk about in a second if you want. And I said, tell it to act as an aggressive, growth-minded board member in reviewing your strategic plan, that your goal is that it bulletproofs it, to challenge every assumption. Does the plan have the sufficiency to deliver the results that he wants? Are there things he should be considering that he's not considering? Are there things he's currently saying yes to that he should be saying no to? And to ask as many questions as it needed, one at a time, to gain context, so it could then tell him what he liked about his plan what he didn't like about his plan, and the top changes he would need to make to his plan. AI conducted an exhaustive interview and came back and said, your plan does have the sufficiency to help you hit your goals this year in alignment with your 10-year goals, but it's going to violate the quality of life that you want to live as a person. Instead of this, my recommendation is that you stop flipping houses altogether and instead focus on multifamily real estate and the service-based businesses that surround them. Here's why. And it literally made an argument for why he should stop doing the entire business that he is currently doing and instead acquire buildings and companies that service the buildings. Here's where this gets crazy. With that insight, in the next 30 days, instead of going and getting another house under contract where he would net $10,000, he got a building under contract that, since he got it at such a steep discount, the moment it closed, he netted $1 million.
Come on.
Dead serious, from one prompt. So when I said at the beginning of this episode, you could use a prompt that could return $1 or $1 million, I actually meant it.
Hey, Jeff, do all your buddies just call you up with all their problems or their business challenges? Like, oh, all right, let me send you a text, or let's just spend 5 minutes. I want you to figure this out for me all the time.
No, but I did talk to a guy yesterday who's starting a property management company, and I literally sent him the text to get AI to act as an analyst that could conduct research to identify the top things people love about a property management company and the top things they hate about a property management company and the top non-obvious strategies he could deploy to build a competitive moat. And then based on that research, to then conduct a prompt where it would act as a board member. They would interview him to understand more about how he's visualizing the company with the context of the top things they would like, didn't like, and non-obvious strategies, to then create a competitive strategy statement that would outline the protective moat he's building, so that he shared it with any real estate owner or real estate agent. They would go, we need to talk to you.
Well, that's impressive for a lot of reasons. One is my family owns a property management company, so I got to get my brother on it to figure that out. Now we're talking to AI and all the skills that are required to do it, and we talk a lot about curiosity. What are some of the key critical skills that leaders are going to need outside of using AI to make it effective moving forward in the future?
Change management. So everything we've talked about up until this point is me showing you how do you raise your standards for your relationship with this technology. Instead of using it as a Google to ask questions to, or an assistant to delegate tasks to elevate its role in your life as a thought partner with you as the thought leader. That's everything we've talked to up to this point. The moment you become proficient in using AI, you are naturally going to want to get your leadership team to start using this. Once you get your leadership team to start using this, you're going to want to start strategically expanding this in your company to the next set of people. But then you're going to need a skill set of, how do we start to identify use cases where we could use this technology to make things more efficient? Over time, you are going to want to drive this through the whole company to the point where every single person is AI driven, just like every person uses the internet. Every person knows how to use Word and Excel. AI is going to be the exact same. It will become that pervasive, but you have to understand how to lead that change, which also is going to require the conversations about how do people's roles transform. I'm telling you that if we fast forward 5 years, I think people's job descriptions are going to look very different. The skills they apply, the processes they follow are going to be very different. And I didn't pick that number out of nowhere. That came directly from Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google. He said, we are going to be living in a fundamentally different world in the next 5 years. Not 10, 5. Every part of your business is going to look different in the next 5 years. Damon, he said that almost a year ago. So this is why there's this compelling reason and case to take action now. No longer as a leader can you say, I'll get to it later, or somebody else in the company will figure this out. If you are currently thinking that way, you are abdicating your responsibility as a leader. I don't care if you're even in the middle of the organization, waiting for somebody from on high to come up with something. You are giving away your power. You have an opportunity to get in the driver's seat, start building competence using this yourself as a thought partner at your level, and start having the conversations up the chain of command and seeing how you can contribute to help create an AI-driven organization. You will not lose your job to AI. You might lose your job to the person that is AI-driven. So I'm asking you to become that person so you can displace yourself and create a bigger opportunity.
One more question. Going back to your book, which I think is phenomenal and everybody should pick up. What are your goals you're looking to accomplish with your book?
I want to create the future of leadership. I genuinely want to create a completely new category of leader that is the AI-driven leader. This is a person that understands their true human strengths. They focus it on the priorities of their role in alignment with the goals of the company, and they are supercharged with AI. AI enhances them. It does not replace them. For the book, I needed a way to give a non-technical leader a simple roadmap to go from 0 to 1, using this technology in a way that would matter. That is working. Now, the business of AI leadership is about saying, okay, great. You get how to prompt and you get how to use the technology. How do you now start to drive this into your organization so you can accelerate growth and build a competitive advantage? And that's where the whole focus is, the collective. Because I think the technology is just moving too fast. If you try to navigate this alone, you're going to lose. And so my vision is that over the next 10 years, we will have 10,000 executives, all with decision-making authority. They have to be able to approve budget within the collective, where we get off-site several times a year to have the space to think strategically, to learn from each other. But we're going to centralize all the knowledge of these 10,000 people. And from that, create the roadmaps, the playbooks, the systems, and give it to everyone. So like when I look at the offsite coming up here, we are going to have every person build their own AI board of advisors. So if they have a real board, this will help them collapse the time it takes to prepare for the board meeting. If they don't have a real board, they will create a custom AI board of advisors to augment their strengths and weaknesses as a leader so that they can have a board of advisors designed for them that they can go to for thought partnership. I have one, like Steve Jobs is on my board for vision and product design, but explicitly he's not allowed to give me any feedback on being a better father or leader. Dead serious.
I think that could be a workshop in itself or consulting on itself on how to build it. I mean, that is huge right there. So we talked about the collective and we also talked about your book. Where else can we connect with you?
Yeah, I would strongly get the book. It's on hardcover, Audible. It's actually me reading it and the Kindle. I have a newsletter that is truly world-class. My audience is leaders who don't read emails. And I wanted to create something that was so valuable that you would read the email. And so every week we are sharing use cases, real stories like the one I shared on here, and the prompt that was used to generate the results so that you can start applying it and you can get on the newsletter at aileadership.com.
What about your podcast?
Oh, yeah. I'm launching a podcast, same title as the book, The AI-Driven Leader. If you check it out now, you will just see a trailer episode. But if you follow the show, there will be episodes that I'm going to be launching this year.
And I think what I heard you say is it going to be exciting about that is you do that, and then you could use all those transcripts to help create prompts and everything else afterwards. I mean, there's so much ways to repurpose everything. Jeff, you've been beyond awesome. I mean, we talked about how you want AI where you're the thought leader, it's your thought partner, you know, how you got to get out of the fixed mindset because you have to move forward with this, how you could 10x your employees, how you need to focus on not what everybody else is doing on writing better emails or social media copy, but really the things that matter most. And what I like a lot right there at the end is building your own AI board of advisors. Jeff, you're awesome. Thank you. And everybody out there, do me a favor. Go get Jeff's book. And then also go in and look at his online, his thought leadership or thought leader that as he's trained to work with this book. I played around with that last night, and the free foundation course that you have on there. There's so
Thank you.
many great takeaways that people, there's prompts and everything that people can actually apply themselves.
I literally created, most people are charging money to teach you how to prompt. I gave it away for free. So on AI leadership, there's a crash course. It will literally help you understand the prompt ingredients and how to use it. And I wanted the book to be interactive, which is why I made the thought partner something like you can literally have a conversation with AI Jeff about the book to understand how to drive it into the company.
Thanks, Jeff.
If I was a learning professional, and I mean, already last year and probably even before that, AI started to really make a big splash. But I think this year it really dominated a lot of the conversations. I have to imagine that people were having, and of course, a lot of the businesses on the expo floor, they're just really focused on AI. Mm-hmm. So if I would feel like if I didn't show up, it's like things are happening so fast. Like stuff is changing very quickly with the introduction of AI in some different ways. What should how concerned should I be? Am I still going to have a job in 3 months? Is everything just going to be replaced with AI avatars? What's the story? What's the AI story here? Matt, give us your hot take.
Sure. My hot take, well, step back is there was, probably a flood of I think 70% of the talks seem to be AI related, if not all of them touched on it at some point. So it's definitely here, right? But there was also a lot of people, the speakers do a great job of polling, right? They should be good at facilitating. So they're polling the room to kind of take a temperature on where people were and where people are as far as from AI, as far as I'm going to keep my head in the sand for as long as possible, and I want to stay away from it. I want to use it. I use it every day. It does everything for me, right? You still saw a broad brush of everyone was represented, right? So I think first and foremost, you kind of go, okay, whoa, we're all in this, and we're all thinking about it. Well, there is more, and a lot of speakers spoke to that. It is moving more and more to the right. More and more people are using this in finding ways to get creative about it. And so I think if anything, I think the thing with the AI is no matter where you're at, it's just keep leaning into that. And then the message, the kind of quote that was leveraged was, is AI going to replace you? AI is not going to replace you. However, the person using AI is the person that's going to replace you. So that was kind of the kick for most of us to kind of think about what did our relationship need to be with AI.
What does that mean exactly? So AI is not going to replace you, but AI is going to replace the person using you? What?
So those using AI are the people that are going to replace the people that aren't using AI. So
I see.
This is a technology set that we all need to be conversant, leveraging, and comfortable using.
Yeah.
Because of what it can bring us. All technology has always helped basically make us more efficient and improved results.
Right. If you're not using AI, that's how you're gonna fall out. But then the question is, how should you use AI? I noticed for myself that I just got finished up working on a delegation class, and I used AI a lot, but really in a supporting role. I have to say, for me, it almost didn't make things faster for me. It just made everything a lot better. It's now it's oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, so I'm going to do it. And it ends up taking me a lot of time, but I feel like I have a much better product at the end. Is that the kind of how are you hearing about people using AI maybe to design and develop programs or to deliver programs? Mickey, what are some of the things that you are hearing this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that I think that there's a grouping of people that look at AI and they say, this is going to replace everything. There's a grouping of people that look at things and say, this is going to reduce time or reduce effort. And then I think there's another group, and this is kind of what you just said, which is kind of the enrichment or the depth or the quality of kind of how we do what we do, right? And so that's, I think, the categories of how a lot of people are looking at AI. I mean, there's and that too goes on that same kind of risk and use spectrum. I think that Matt was talking about is like all the way from, I talked to people that they said, these websites, OpenAI and stuff like that are like blacklisted by my organization. So I can't even use it at work, even if I wanted to, all the way to people that are 110% all in. Right. And so I think like any new technology, we're in an infancy stage of exploration and curiosity and can it do this? Can it do that? And think about it. I mean, we were in these same stages 20 to 30 years ago with like, web-based, internet stuff, right? Of like, ooh, look at all this fancy cloud-based software. Like, whoa, this is amazing. I don't have to have something downloaded on my computer, right? Like, this is amazing stuff. And this is the cycle, but this is a huge cycle. Instead of taking one step on the staircase, we're taking like 5 steps at once. And so some people feel naturally averse to that, kind of that risk aversion. But I do hear a lot more, and I think naturally because of being in the learning and development field, I hear a lot more of kind of what you're saying, Darren, which is, this is cool. And wow, did I go on a path of exploration that I wasn't expecting? But now all of a sudden I have this massive amount of information available to me, way faster than even as fast as a Google search is or something, that I now have a lot more for me to pick and choose from and to think about and kind of mull over in terms of what do I want to do and be able to support people with learning efforts, as opposed to just what I know to search and where do I know to go to look for resources or whatever that is. And so I think there's this like richness and this quality piece too that's part of the conversation with AI, rather than just this used to take me 4 hours, now it takes me 1 hour. Like, there is definitely that, and that's amazing. But there's also this quality and depth piece that's pretty awesome too.
Yeah. Matt, you have conversations with our customers day in, day out. These are maybe business unit leaders or L&D professionals who are looking to want to partner with somebody for training. And I know they're coming to you with questions or concerns or hopes when it comes to AI. What are you gonna tell them now after this conference? Like, what's new on the plate for you to be talking about as somebody who's an expert in this field, and been part of this conversation when it comes to AI?
Sure. I think one of the maxims that are shared also that I think is a useful way is thinking about AI as your intern. So having this intern responsibilities. And so what I like about that is, one, it reminds us that this can be a tool to do more, right? Darren, similar to what you shared, right? I maybe didn't save time, but I was able to up level the product that I did by using it, right? I think that's what we use interns to help us, right? Like, kind of get to the next reaches or those levels that we're like, oh, if I had all the time, I would do this also, right? So it does help us kind of reach that point. And I think, but also with the intern, you have to like inspect what you expect, right? So there is this level of, so like, for sure, right? There are other aspects that come up with AI that can be scary and pose real risk, right? So we still need to be the center of this and kind of looking back and reflecting. And most organizations who have been talking about it, right, are all setting up, how are we going to do this? What is our governance around these? What are our philosophies around this, values, et cetera? And that's a really important exercise to kind of go through. I think there's still a lot of people, I know people are still taking action without those in place because it's just here. But if anything, I think that AI as an intern helps basically both sides of it, right? For the practitioner and for the business to understand, like, hey, we need these folks, or we need this technology to help us kind of go to those next levels.
Yeah. And so treating AI like an intern, and I think another one I hadn't heard before is inspect what you expect. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. Like you're still, it's not like here, boop, 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 and then goes out there. Right.
I have noticed that. Yeah. It doesn't always produce exactly what you need.
Yeah. And the prompts are made to be different at multiple ways. And I talked to a couple of folks that we would do the same prompt with different solutions, And that was kind of like, okay, I'll use one prompt and I'll use it across these different things, because there are a lot of solutions out there that are kind of keep coming up to the surface. And she commented that she's like, it was just bizarre how different they all were.
Yeah.
But they all got her excited about what the possibilities were.
On this AI track, and we'll move to some of the other topics in a few moments here, but did you hear anything or see anything AI related that really surprised you? Something you hadn't seen or heard before? I watched the ChatGPT 4.0 demo, and I was pretty blown away by how human-like the interaction could be. But in terms of like the classes or maybe on the expo floor, did you see anything kind of like new and interesting? Let's go to Mickey first, if you saw anything, and Matt, if you have anything else too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you said that about like the human-like nature. I think those were the things that really interested me, and I come from a background of higher education and psychology and stuff, so I'm always looking for that like human connection piece. But I love the idea of people and organizations, and I saw this in several of the different booths and organizations out there, of using AI as, whether you want to kind of think of it as a bot, as a coworker. I love this idea of the intern, but having it be, it's another program, it's another window that we have open that we can kind of bounce ideas off of. And I saw a number of different companies essentially having something like that, asking quick questions in the same way that, and especially I think for us of all kind of working remotely and distributed, in the same way that maybe you would kind of like run down to somebody's office and be like, hey, I have a quick question for you. What do you think about, right? But using AI in that sort of sense, and kind of there's a number of different organizations that have different, the outward appearance of it looks a little bit different from company to company, but that's essentially kind of the innards of it, is using AI as a backboard. If you think about it like a basketball hoop, right? Kind of using it as a backboard for you to bounce ideas off of. And that even changed my methodology of kind of thinking about things. Of I usually, or up until the conference, would go to some of these AI services that I'm using with a very specific project or a task or something, and now I find I'm just kind of keeping a window open, and as I'm curious about something, I just put a question in there to kind of, again, use that kind of backboard idea. And so I saw that in a number of different companies, and not necessarily surprising or unique, but a different way of thinking, a different way of operating, in the same way that maybe, I might keep a search bar window open. Now I'm going to keep an AI chat window open to kind of use that as a way to kind of bounce ideas off. Yeah.
Like that, to treat it like a backboard and just bounce ideas off. This is how you sort of develop your friendship with AI, right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to keep a little window open and backboard. So what's your favorite thing about me, AI? Just for those days I need a little pick-me-up.
I'm going to train my AI to be Darren. Yeah. The voice of Darren.
The voice of Darren. I think you should go for the voice of Matthew McConaughey. Of course, they did get in trouble with Scarlett Johansson's voice.
Right. Indeed. Yeah.
So I think Matthew McConaughey's voice would be a dead giveaway. Matt, how about for you? See anything that new, revelatory, surprising? Where do you think the industry is going to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tricky to think about what might be new to folks, but I think one lens that, again, I think helped folks go through is one of the talks was done where they talked to the ADDIE model, which is a popular instructional design model, and they shared ways that here's tools that we use in that model, here's prompts that we've done in that model, that we've just experimented in those areas. And they did a really nice job of kind of breaking that down. And so I think for like larger teams, that could be an effective way to work through the conversation as a group and organization, to think about, okay, in the analyze phase, okay, how do we do that now? If we were thinking that intern model, if we had an intern, what could we ask an intern to go do to even do it, enrich that part of that process for us, all the way down to E, which is evaluation mode, right? One of the prompts that they shared, and we talk about this a lot internally at Learn It, right? We gather a lot of data and we have a lot of these touch points with individuals, right? How can we kind of distill and share that back? And we found really good ways to do that with our programs, where we've used AI to summarize and kind of do that and kind of share back those business outcomes that we're helping achieve through our learning programs. But one of the prompts that was shared, a simple prompt that they did share, was like, they're like, hey, from this Miro board point, can you give us some of the top 5 learning objectives that you would recommend in a follow-up? Mm-hmm. Right. So those are kind of like, maybe again, they feel like they could be, that's a very simplified example. But I think if you're breaking it down and thinking about the different parts of the process and thinking about what are already existing pieces, and then therefore where can our intern maybe help us extend and improve in those?
You know, Matt, I think you make a really good point with that. And I was just meeting with one of our teammates the other day and, you know, kind of readying up our AI classes that we're going to be offering very soon here, I think the end of this month. And I think that's what people are looking for, is like frameworks and mental, you know, how do I look at what I do every single day and figure out what are my use cases? Because I think it's very easy for organizations to say, there's thousands of use cases, right, but tell me what that looks like for my job, right? For on a Monday, I have to do this task every single week. Is this a use case? What would I do with this? How would I do with this? And like, that's what I'm really excited about in facilitating some of these workshops pretty soon here, is to be able to actually sit with people and be like, okay, think about your actual job, not some theoretical concepts about, you know, amazing organizational shifts and whatnot, but what are the things that you need to do? And how do we actually kind of map that out and experiment and kind of use some of these frameworks or these kind of mental models to think about how we integrate this into our work so that it doesn't feel like this kind of earthquake, kind of ground altering sort of experience for people, but really this is another way to make your work stronger, you know, and that's what I'm really excited about, is kind of seeing how we can, you know, there are people, like anything, people that are very excited about change, right? The people that, and then there's all the way at the end, the people that you need to kind of like drag across the finish line. I'm super excited to be able to kind of meet all of those people along the way and say, like, what does this look like for your work, right? How do we bring your work experience into this and kind of shine the light on that a little bit to show people like, this isn't a scary thing. In fact, this is pretty amazing, you know, and it's a great tool for you to use, just like all the rest of the tools that we've, you know, incorporated. And, you know, I mean, you know, 15 years ago, nobody was saying Microsoft Teams, you know, or, you know, people weren't really using Zoom and all this. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do my job without that, you know.
When it comes to, I mean, we have an uncertain future. Of course, we always do. But I mean, there's just tons of disruption with AI and how things are going. How is that going to affect pricing, or do you see it affecting pricing?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. So a couple years ago, I was looking at flights on, I think it's Expedia or Orbitz, one of the places, and you know, I was sort of obsessed with this trip. And then when I was in bed, and then I was doing it on my iPhone, and then I went to my laptop, and I was like, wow, this price is very different when I was doing it on my iPhone versus a laptop. And it was even different if I was using their app. Okay. And then Kathy, who was sitting right next to me, did the same search, and she found something different. I was like, wow, what is going on? So I was like, oh, you know. And so I wrote a piece for the Harvard Business Review it was on personalized pricing. And, you know, we really worked hard to document everything. So there would be, you know, everything was really, really, you know, very well documented. And it did very well. I mean, it got a lot of reading. But what I was sort of surprised about is that it didn't become a bigger story. And so people complain about this, but what's odd is they seem to be accepting, you know, different prices. You know, for someone like Bruce Springsteen to come out and charge $5,000 for a seat, and yeah, he got a little bit of blowback, but you know, generally it was accepted. You know, is telling me that you and or perhaps I thought that people would be like, oh, this is not right, you shouldn't be doing this. But you know what's odd is that you're not seeing that. And it's something that surprises me. And so AI or data backed pricing that sort of, you know, might personalize a price. I would be nervous about, because people can get wacky about prices. And if they feel like they're being taken advantage of, their attitude of you can turn in a second. But in reality, and I really believe that, but in reality, you're not really seeing that. So maybe there is this flexibility. And look, I get it. Everyone finally gets and understands dynamic pricing for like Uber or this and that. And like, look, it's 12:01. You want to get home on on New Year's Eve. You can hope to get a cat taxi, hope to get a bus, or for 7x, you can get home with Uber. But it's a different thing is if I'm shopping right next to you online and we're getting different prices. And as of now, you're not seeing a lot of pushback on that.
Do you think it's because of the internet where things are just changing and they're so dynamic all the time where you and so people just, it's just kind of chaotic. So they've just become more immune to those kind of differences?
Chaotic might mean sort of like giving up on getting the best price. It could be. It could be. I mean, one of the things that I do for fun is like, when I travel a lot, I use Google Flights to monitor the flights. And I often notice that prices change very drastically. And so if you want, now with the airlines, there's no change fee. So you can call them up or rebook it online. You get a credit for a year. But once again, that's for price sensitive people. How many people are looking at this, monitoring it, and then coming back and say, oh yeah, I want to cancel it and then rebook it? Not a lot of people. So, but I think you're right. I mean, the sort of the chaos, and maybe there's this feeling of, okay, well, this is how it is.
It's like in that 1984 way where, there'd be constant surveillance, right? But instead of anybody caring about that, all they care about is like, how can I surveil you so I know what I can sell you? And the bargain we get is a lot of convenience. So it's like we kind of accept this world where we have a lot of convenience but not a lot of agency to change things. And I think we're just sort of passive in this current state.
Could be, yes.